Kia ora tātou katoa, tuatahi mihi tēnei kia koutou I huhui mai nei tēnei wā. Nō reira tēnā koutou ki a koe Denise, pai te kiti atu I a koe, Marge, Lorraine, kua hara mai ki te tautoko mai I ahau. Tēnā koutou. I just want to quickly introduce myself in a visual way in terms of where I'm from. I'm from Taranaki and from Waikato, born and bred in Waitara. My iwi a Tiatiawa, Waikato Tainui and Taranaki Whānui, so it goes around the whole of the mountain. And my hapu, my sub-tribal groups are Ngāti Rahiri, Ngāti Mahanga and Ngā Mahanga Tairi. I wanted to introduce you to this whakawai, which is a Taranaki word for whakatauki. He maunga tito here, he Waipuna Koropupū, aho ko tukutuki e te poaka, e kore nei mimiti ka koropupū, ka koropupū. This whakatauki is an instruction from the past and a message of hope for future generations, the strength to keep bubbling on despite seemingly insurmountable assaults. Waipuna Koropupū highlights the critical components of past resistance and future potential, the concept of having fluidity to adapt and the strength to sustain. They are kōrero from our tūpuna, from our ancestors that provide us with guidance and understandings of our place in the world and in their aspirations for us. Whakatauki like this are deeply embedded within our scientific, cultural and spiritual knowledges that pertain to our world and all within it. For example, he manu koro miro miro refers to a person who has a sharp eye for detail, as if you know the bird, ko miro miro, it's a bird that carefully scans its environment for its food, particularly for insects. These kinds of understandings, these knowledges, these sciences are central to mātauranga Māori. For many years I've had the honour to learn from many and work alongside exceptional people, and I wanted today to acknowledge that Te Ara Tiatia, the original Māori education team at the University of Auckland, with Māori scholars Linda and Graham Smith, Cooney Jenkins, Margie Hohepa, Trish Johnson, Cheryl Smith and Janelle Morgan. Every week as a team we were in the company of incredibly learned Māori knowledge holders who have all been at the cutting edge of the work of uplifting rangatiratanga and who gave the impetus and support for the revitalisation and regeneration of what people now call generally mātauranga Māori. I want to mention the Māori education team at the University of Auckland because alongside many movements for te reo Māori and tikanga, it was a part of shaping much of the foundational work that we now call kaupapa Māori, and that we see as being informed by a whole range of earlier movements such as Ngā Tamatoa, Te Reo Māori Society, Kia ora David, occupations of our whenua such as Takaparawhau, Whaingaroa, the fight of many whānau for the establishment of kohanga, and kura, which is an ongoing fight in terms of the legitimation of mātauranga Māori and Māori knowledge. As we know, the runanga o kura kaupapa Māori are currently back in the tribunal 40 years after the establishment of kura. Distinguished Professor Graham Heningaro Smith has always stated that kaupapa Māori movement is a ringaropa movement. Ringaropa means those with blistered hands, those who show the blisters on their hands, who have been doing the work and are able to reflect and speak across multiple places and spaces within our whānau and our communities, and the fights in the courts and within challenges to many government agencies. They are those who do the work. The advocacy for kaupapa Māori theory and methodology is a part of a wider assertion of mātauranga Māori, to take our place within Aotearoa as tangata whenua or indigenous knowledge and epistemologies. For generations we've dealt with the ongoing increasing imposition of external Western defined notions of what constitutes knowledge, of who defines knowledge, of who determines which knowledge is seen as valid, of who determines which knowledge is important or of significance, and who controls the mechanisms of knowledge production, dissemination, transmission, and whose language can be spoken through in that regard. The control of knowledge is central to a colonial project grounded upon acts of violence and upon all indigenous people, including here. Colonisation is not a singular event as many people would have us believe. It's both events and ongoing systems and structures. It's a daily experience for many indigenous people. It's something we live with every day. In a very simple way of providing an example, it is overlooked that the many daily ways that we experience this are often overlooked by many people. I've recently returned to Waitara, the home of my own people, and I walk on the streets in that town every day. We live on Brown Street. Brown Street was named after Gore Brown. Parallel to our street is Grey Street. Parallel to that is Dumet Street. The main street is McLean Street. Māori people who live within Waitara and within Taranaki, who are not only dealing with the confiscation of our lands, have to live every day with walking on streets named after the exact colonial militia that were instrumental in that disposition. The denial and the subjugation of Māori language, of tikanga and mātauranga, have to be seen in the context of colonial epistemic violence upon our people. These acts are ongoing, and the letter penned to the listener a number of months ago against the inclusion of mātauranga Māori is at its very least epistemic violence. And such violence against Māori and indigenous people is grounded upon notions of knowledge superiority and systemic racism. It's also evident that the majority of the authors that chose to put their names to that penned letter have very little, if any, knowledge of what constitutes mātauranga Māori. And that other authors, such as Pākehā educationalist Elizabeth Lata, has made a career on dismissing many things Māori due to her own personal issues, as opposed to any robust, academic or scholarly argument. The need for all institutions who are working in the sciences and in mātauranga, the knowledges, such as universities and the Royal Society, have a role in challenging such statements. We should not buy into the argument that it is an attack on academic freedoms. We can challenge each other's social and political underpinning of such assertions without doing damage to academic freedom. These are the claims made within that debate are often themselves fundamentally unscientific by their own definition. If science is at its very fundamental base, the pursuit and application of knowledge and understanding of a natural and social world following systematic methodologies based on evidence, then clearly there are critical aspects within mātauranga Māori that aligns to that definition. As Professor Rangi Mātauranga discussed on the Hui program not long ago, however you look at mātauranga Māori, it is science. And I think there is empirical science embedded at the heart of our knowledge systems. Even in definitions, it's systematically compiled knowledge around subject matter, or its understanding the behaviour of the natural and physical world, and experimentation, and its understanding of the world, and our interaction with it. And all of these elements are science. Our ancestors and our people have always been scientists. And it's not just navigation or our food technology, it's in our agriculture, it's in our fishing techniques, it's in our clothing, it's in everything that we've done. To place mātauranga Māori as an inferior knowledge form of the indigenous other that is not science is an act of epistemic violence and injustice, and as such are forms of colonial knowledge and oppression. Kaupapa Māori scholars and researchers will not only challenge those views, but will continue to uplift our ways of knowing and being. As is said in the Whakawai, our tūpuna have gifted us these knowledges, and we too have a role, not only Māori, but all within Aotearoa, to ensure that all of our tamariki and mokopuna will continue to have these knowledges that are inherently embedded in this country, in this land, available to them all and present for them. He wai koropupū, he wai koropupū. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou.
Thank you, that was great. Are there any questions for the speaker, please? Please.
Thank you very much. So one approach is to introduce Mātauranga Māori within existing, say, schools and universities. But then there's a deeper criticism that's often made, which is that the very structure of our education system commits epistemic violence. Just thinking about universities in particular, do you have any thoughts about what a decolonised university would look like, or how the structure of a university would change?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a number of levels structurally for universities, not only in terms of, as you're saying, the curriculum content, but I was just listening to Te Mairi Tau's discussion next door around what rangatiratanga might mean in terms of authentic, meaningful, enduring and operationalising te tiriti o waitangi relationships. So I think that it must start there. The thing about universities, and Linda Smith wrote about this in her PhD prior to Decolonizing methodologies, is that the university system in this country was based on the confiscation of 30,000 acres of Māori land that went into an endowment for the universities of New Zealand to establish. So from their very foundation, they've actually been built on dispossession and on the benefits of confiscation. So rethinking all of that from both philosophically, but also from the land up. So at the moment, the University of Waikato is currently the only one that pays the iwi as the landlord. And that's because Waikato Tainui were able to put that into their treaty claim. There are a number of issues that have come up recently with universities selling land or buying land through the Ministry of Education for $1 or $10 and then selling it off for $49 million. You know, the whole kind of economic system as well as the internal philosophical systems that we're talking about. So I think it is about dismantling a whole range of things and rethinking quite carefully how we do that, as we did with the university, with the schooling system. But the other one is that we currently only have 3 wānanga. The 3 wānanga are funded at much less rate to a university funding. They're also, their compliance is exceedingly extreme. Having seen the wānanga and having been in the university, when I see what the compliance for a wānanga compared to the compliance for a university, there's just no comparison. So I think there's a whole range of speaking into those spaces that need to be done. Linda Smith has always said, you know, because universities are built on Māori land, often Māori land that was confiscated and dispossessed, all universities have a role in ensuring that there's a treaty-based relationship. That is more than just saying I'm a treaty-led university, but it's actually meaningful. So. Kia ora.
Thank you very much. We have time for perhaps a quick question. One more, please. Denise?
Mine's not so much a question, but tēnā koe, Leonie. I just want to acknowledge the tremendous contribution you've made to mātauranga for our whānau and for our future generations. And I think, you know, having more of that available is a really positive step moving forward into our future. So,
Kia ora.
thank
Kia
you.
ora, Denise.